Working with the incoming Trump transition team, that they've all been speaking with one voice, speaking as one team. But when asked about who gets the credit for this deal, him or Trump, he said, this was the exact same deal that I proposed May 31st of this year, or last year, rather. He didn't give any of the credit to Trump. But remember what Trump said quite emphatically back on January 7th. Listen here.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. Can you elaborate? And it will not be good for Hamas. And it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
We talked about this, that comment by President Trump about all hell breaking loose. What Vance said to me is like, listen, world leaders and people know that Trump means it and that there will be dire consequences for Hamas if this deal doesn't get done. At that same time, as you guys have talked about, Steve Witkoff, who has been the envoy for the Trump administration on this deal, on these negotiations, was in the region this weekend trying to get this thing done as well. And it's possible they're all working together. But Vance is very clear, as I'm sure the president-elect would also say, he believes that it's the threats that actually got the needle moving. And when I pressed Vance on that, what exactly does that mean? He said it's empowering and allowing Israel to do what it has to do to wipe out everything left of Hamas. But it's also financial sanctions and tough crackdowns on people who are enabling terrorism within that region. It goes beyond just Hamas. So clearly there was a broader message that there would be, quote, hell to pay in that region.
So the hostage families have weighed in, lest their concerns and the concerns of the hostages get lost in who's getting or taking credit for all of this. They just released this statement. This is the Hostages and Missing Families Forum headquarters. We, the families of 98 hostages, welcome with overwhelming joy and relief the agreement to bring our loved ones home. We wish to express our profound gratitude to President-elect Trump, President Biden, both administrations, and the international mediators for making this possible. Don't forget, these are families who have been waiting in anguish for 466 days for their loved ones to come home. And while many of them may not come home alive, they will at least get some sense of closure that their loved ones are back on Israeli soil if this deal, in fact, does go through.
Yeah, and all of us have had an opportunity to interview and talk and meet with these families and to feel that absolute heartbreaking, gut-wrenching sorrow that they've had. As you said, not knowing at times whether their loved ones are alive or not. This has gone on way beyond, I think, the beginning fears of what happened in the aftermath of October 7th. And it was one of those things, as we watched that horrific day and kept getting news as it was unfolding, the fact that they had taken so many people, Hamas, back into Gaza was of enormous concern, because immediately you knew they would be negotiating blocks. That's how they would be used. And these families would be left, as they have, with absolute heartbreak and bewilderment and not knowing and wondering about the safety of their loved ones, wondering if they were suffering, whether they would ever get them back. So, John, you're so right to point us back to these families, because this is what this is about, is these lives hanging in the balance and trying to make sure that as many are preserved as possible.
Absolutely. Prayers all over the world for these hostages. And in his remarks just now, President Biden talking about the phases that will now happen with the hostage release, saying Americans will be part of phase one of that hostage release. Shannon, as you probably were watching every detail of this, as we first started to report on the ceasefire deal being reached, Benjamin Netanyahu's office seemed to put out a statement suggesting, wait, hold on, pumping the brakes. There's still some details to finalize here, possibly by tonight. While the president just confirmed that this deal has been reached, we still haven't seen an update from Benjamin Netanyahu's office. Maybe that's on the way. Maybe that's happening. Maybe they directly communicated before Biden announced that to the world. But just noting, I haven't seen any further communication from Netanyahu's office.
Yeah, I haven't either. And what he said about trying to get the details hammered out, we all know those are the sticking points. This has been grueling and it has been exhausting and it's been tedious for everybody trying to get this thing done. But Netanyahu is not going to cede anything he doesn't have to cede to these terrorists that he says, we do not want to reward them. We do not want to leave a faction of them that will come back. Our borders are dangerous. This is an existential threat, by Hamas's own words. So I am anxious to see a little bit more from the Prime Minister's office, something a little bit more definitive. But as you know, President Biden was walking away saying you'll get the details shortly. Maybe those are things that these two world powers are still negotiating, or at least getting onto